Interviews are so important when it comes to making your videos, from documentaries to promos, commercials. There are so many scenarios where you can use interview to tell your story. Over the years, especially as I've worked my way into directing, I've conducted my fair share. I'm definitely still figuring it out, but I wanted to at least share a couple things that have helped me along the way. So the first thing I want to discuss is framing. Whether you are a director, a cinematographer, a one-man band, I think choosing your interview frames and keeping in mind the story and the goal of your video is the most important thing. Sometimes you're working on a corporate shoot that calls for a very clean, standard medium shot, which is totally cool. You can mix that with a tight B cam that gives you this very classic, professional, clean feel. Other times you can get away with a bit more style. One thing I really love doing is getting super tight on your subject. This creates a lot more intimacy and I think authenticity, because when you get really tight, you're showing all the little details and getting really personal with your subject. I will say though that if your subject is uncomfortable on camera, it is a little bit jarring to have the camera straight in their face, but just something to keep in mind. Another shot I really like is the full body wide interview. We did this a couple months back on my ice hockey mini doc, and it was a lot of fun. It makes everything feel a lot larger than life. We wanted to show off the locker room, and we also kind of made the creative decision to leave a lot of headroom, which stylistically looked great. Again, it just made the space feel a lot larger than it actually was. I also think having some fun with interview angles is really cool too. A while back, I made my senior thesis, which was a documentary about people from Philadelphia. In the interview, I wanted to show different parts of my subject to tell the story. So for example, I used some pretty standard interview setups, but with my B cam, I spiced it up a little bit by capturing a different part of each of the subject's bodies to tell the story. For subject 1, a musician, I captured a shot of his mouth to show how he speaks to his community. For subject 2, a volunteer ice hockey coach, I captured a shot of his hands to show how he touches his community. And for subject 3, an orphan mother who lost her daughter, I captured her eyes to show what she sees. So capturing angles like these can lead to some really impactful moments in your videos. Also, just spend time watching stuff and taking note when you see a cool interview frame. I actually have this folder on my laptop that is filled with different frames from stuff that I just really like, and I can use them as references to kind of get some inspiration as I'm starting a new project. When it comes to actually conducting interviews, that definitely takes some time to figure out. For me, I always go in with a list beforehand of questions and a really thorough knowledge of my subject. If possible, I like to schedule discovery sessions, which can be as simple as a quick 20 to 30 minute video call where you sit down with your subject and you get to know them. It gives you a chance to get more comfortable with your subject, to get to know their story, and you can use the session to make more informed decisions in the creative during pre-pro. But the main point that I really want to stress in this video is that you have to try and get your subject to forget that they're on camera. Whether it's a business owner, athlete, artist, or whoever it is you're talking to, the first thing that's going to be on their mind is, man, I hope I don't sound stupid. They're going to start thinking about the perfect way to say things. And while that's helpful some of the times, I have found that is way more personal and way more authentic when they're speaking to you as if they're in a conversation with you. So think about it like they're speaking to you or with you and not at you, if that makes sense. So to work towards that, there are a couple things that I like to do. The first being to not ask the most hard-hitting questions right off the bat. You want to warm up your subjects. So you can even ask unrelated questions like what you had for breakfast this morning. It throws them off their game a little bit, gets them out of their head, and asking an unrelated question that they weren't prepared for can sometimes make it easier to just start talking to them. You can also do some of the talking yourself. If you resonate with something that your subject said, feel free to give some of your own thoughts on the subject. I think it helps your interviewee kind of spark some more thoughts on that subject, and it overall just keeps the conversation going and keeps things feeling natural. Finally, ask them to tell open-ended stories. I have found that sometimes doing this throws you a little bit off track. Sometimes you get a little too specific, a little bit too detailed, but doing so, I think, gives you a glimpse more into who your subject is. Sometimes you get the perfect golden line, the very end that summarizes the entire story, and sometimes you needed to just go through all of that story and hear all of that to get to that one piece that just brings everything together. I totally understand though that sometimes you just don't have time to dive that deep, and you can't let your subject ramble on if you know you're not going to use it. So at least know about specific stories that you want to ask about and ask them to summarize in a couple sentences or a paragraph to get to the point a little bit quicker. I also think listening to podcasts is super helpful. I know this is a little bit controversial, but I'm a big fan of guys like Joe Rogan and Lex Fridman. Whether you agree with their opinions or not, there's no doubt that they are amazing conversationalists. Listening to these podcasts, and specifically not just to the subject and to their answers, but to the interviewer themselves and how they're navigating conversations, how they're weaving in and out of questions, how they're structuring their conversation, how they're straying away from the main point and then reeling it back in. All those things can be found in podcasts and interviews in general. I think it's super important to just study them, and it's helped me a lot. So definitely recommend trying that out. And lastly, just practice. Get the reps in. I know it's hard, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. It just takes time. So yeah, that about wraps up today's video. Just a quick little thing about interviews. I'm super excited to share my next spec with you guys. It's been a long time coming, and the cuts are finally off to color and sound, so I'll be able to share those very, very soon. But yeah, if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.